Many of you might be joining ship, and you might have to take sounding, and you might be a little worried because this is your first ship and you don't know anything about sounding. Whether I'm going to do something wrong, whether I'll be messing it up, or you might have sailed already and you might have made many mistakes, and you still want to know what we have to do when we take sounding, or how care we have to take, or when we have to raise a red flag. So if you're one of those guys, then make sure you watch this entire video. Hello everyone, my name is Easton Dias and you're at Basic Marine Engineering. Today I'll talk about sounding. Before I start the topic, I would like to tell you one story. When I was doing my 11th, 12th, I had one maths teacher whose name was Mehta sir. He used to say always to us, there should be no points for solving a problem halfway, because tomorrow you're going to become a doctor, you're going to become an engineer. Are you going to construct a half bridge and say I've done half of the part, or are you going to do an operation halfway and say I only know this much? His words during that point of time made us laugh, but when I joined marine engineering, I understood if I don't know my job completely, then we are going to get stuck in the ocean. The same way, don't do halfway jobs, don't do halfway studies. Even when you're watching this video, make sure you watch the entire video, because that is the only way you can know that you have not missed out anything. You might have done the job, you might be knowing the job, but there is no guarantee that you know everything. Or it could happen that I have missed out something and you can help me out. Okay, so make sure you watch the entire video. So I'll try to do the sounding part in detail. I will tell you guys what I used to do, how I used to prepare everything, how I used to take sounding. I will also mention which are the scenarios where you have to raise a flag or you have to report to your seniors. So first of all, let's talk about the requirements. Okay, whenever you want to take sounding, what are the things which are required during that point of time, which is going to make it very easy and clean job. Okay, so first of all, obviously the sounding tape, and you will require a small bucket. You will require some rags or cloth, should I say, to wipe. You will require gasoline finding paste. You will require water finding paste. You will require a little bit of diesel oil. I would say you can take some cloths soaked with diesel oil, or you can have a small container inside the bucket which might not be falling out. Okay, if you can do something like that, or small bottle, then it will be good enough. So all these things you will require if you want to take sounding in a proper way without dirtying the area. And even if you dirty the area, you can clean the area with all the things which I have mentioned. Let me just tell you in brief what we do in the sounding. When we're taking a sounding, we use a sounding tape which is having a bob. So we have to open the sounding cap to the sounding pipe. We will lower the tape, and till the point the bob touches the doubler plate and we get a sound, we lower the sounding tape till that point of time. When that happens, we are winding it up, we just check the level on the tape, where the level marking we can see. So that is a general way of taking sounding. So whatever level you get, that is basically your level which is there inside the tank. Now when you're winding up the tape, what you do, you check for level. Once you found a level, okay, many times it might happen that that level might not be correct, and if you're confused, whether you are not sure, because what happens is sometimes the sounding pipe which is there might be having the medium coated, you might have taken a number of times, and because of that the tank pipe might be coated with oil or something like that. Maybe it might be a sludge tank and it might be coated with the sludge oil. So what can happen is when you're taking the sounding tape up, it might give you a false reading. To confirm the false reading, what you have to do is slightly turn the tape. See on the back side. Suppose if the level is correct, you will find the level on both sides. And if it's a fake reading, you will not find it on the other side. So that is how you're going to confirm about the level. Now this is a general layout. If you want to see the video on which I had done about the sounding, I will put a link up. You can go through that video, and also put a link in the description below. Now let's discuss about tank wise, what we are going to do tank wise, how we are going to take the sounding. So let's talk about double bottom tanks. For double bottom tanks, you have a valve. Just below the cover, you have the valve on the pipe, which is having a weight, and that weight is making sure that the valve remains closed all that point of time. When you're taking sounding for the double bottom tank, what you have to do is you have to slacken the cover. Don't open it up fully. Slacken it, lift the weight. So when you lift the weight, the valve is open. Okay, then leave it. So when you lift the weight, you have to feel the cover. Now why you have to do that? Suppose let's say your double bottom tank is damaged and somehow the water has entered inside. So the tank will be pressurized. And if the tank is pressurized, when you lift the weight, the cover will get pressurized and you will feel the cover if there is any pressure. So this is like a safety measure which you are doing. Just making sure that the tank is not pressurized. For that reason, you will be doing this. Okay. Secondly, what we can do is once you have lifted and checked it up, even when you are opening the cover, okay, just slacken it, just shake it and see. If there is any pressure, you will feel it. So this habit you keep it for all the tanks. Okay, whenever you are opening the cover, always when you reach it at the end, just slacken it. Just shake it a little bit, and then you feel it. Try to feel it. If there is pressure, you will realize it will be very hard, and if there is no pressure, then it will be very loose. So this is how you're going to check whether the tank is pressurized or not. You have to always take care. Okay, consider that the tank is always pressurized and do this. You have to do it for all tanks so that it becomes a habit and you don't end up doing anything wrong. Okay, that is for double bottom tank. Now let's discuss about bilge holding tank or clean bilge tank, what you call. The name might be different for different ships, but whichever tank you are holding for bilge water, which is going to be pumped out through oily water separator, we are talking about that tank. Now what you have to do? You have to make sure you use a clean sounding tape, because we don't want any oil going inside the bilge tank. So for that reason, make sure you're using a clean tape. Okay, or what you can do, always start with bilge tank. You clean the tape, start with bilge tank, and then you can move over to other tanks. Secondly, what can happen is, suppose the bilge tank consists of very clean water. Nowadays when we maintain the ship well, you'll always have very clean water, and when you're taking sounding of tank which is containing water, it becomes very difficult to know the actual sounding, because the tape will be transparent. Okay, if it is oil, what happens is it gets coated. When water is getting coated on a clean tape, it's very difficult to find. So what you have to do is you will have to use something called as water finding paste. Okay, now water finding paste you have to apply only where the probable level will be. Suppose let's say the sounding is around 2 meters. Let's say you applied only for 10 to 20 centimeters. You applied from 1.9 to 2.10 and you put the sounding tape, and then everything changed the color. Okay, now what you will have to do is, that means the tank level is still higher, so you will have to apply higher side. Okay, so if you're taking sounding every day, you will be having an idea what is the actual level. Understood? So this care you'll be taking not just for bilge tank, but also if you're taking sounding of freshwater tanks. But that will be very rare, because most of the time freshwater tank sounding is taken by deck cadet, and he'll be using a designated tape. Okay, that tape is not going to be used, the sounding tape is not used for any other tanks, because freshwater we have to take care, because freshwater we use for drinking. Now let's discuss about sludge tank, sludge holding tank, or BSOT tank we might call, or oily bilge tank. So here what you have to do, now since it's a sludge holding tank, obviously there is sludge inside and it's a thick oil. Okay, now many of them will suggest you you take ullage. We'll discuss ullage later, but many of them will suggest you take ullage. Ullage is good. It might work most of the times. Okay, but there are cases where it can put you in trouble. Many times what happens is, when you are sailing in cold countries, when the when the temperature of the water is very less, So what can happen is the sounding pipe and the sounding, the tank will be very cold, and because of that, what can happen is the level of the sounding pipe might not rise properly because somewhere the clogging has happened. And just because you have been taking ullage, it might not give you the proper sounding. So I would suggest for that we have to use something called a sounding rod. So what we do, we take a rod, we mark it with different levels. Okay, we have to mark it with different levels, and that rod is having a rope, and you lower the rod. Now what happens is, because it's a rod, it will break through, it will pierce through all the sludge which is there. Okay, so once it pierces through, it will clear the sounding pipe also, and it will give you an accurate sounding. Okay, and that rod has to be used only for that purpose. So that care you have to take. So if you use that method, I'm sure you always get a good reading. Okay, next is your sump tank. Sump tank or main engine sump tank, which is consisting of our main engine sump oil. That tank, you have to take care is that you have to use a clean tape so that you don't contaminate the sump oil. That care you will have to take. Then we'll discuss about the bunker tanks, or specifically the heavy oil tanks. Now what happens is, the heavy oil, as we know, is very thick. Okay, so taking sounding in that is difficult. Why? Because oil is thick. If you try to take sounding, the tape might not go properly inside, and because of the thick oil, it might not give you a proper sounding. Now here you have to take ullage. What is ullage? Basically whatever is the height of the tank minus the sounding, actual sounding, is the ullage. So what you do, how you take it? You have to have an idea how much is the oil inside. Okay, let's say the tank height is 4 meters. Okay, and let's say the oil inside is 2 meters. Now this might not be the actual value. This is as per your understanding, or maybe as per the last reading, or you have to consider what was the last reading, how much is the consumption, subtract that, and have an idea how much would be the probable sounding. Now let's say the probable sounding which we think it is 2 meters. So what I'll do, I will lower a tape of 2.1. Okay, so when I lower a 2.1, let's assume at this point of time that assumption was correct, and when we lowered, it will show around 10 centimeters of level. So subtracting that, you know what is the ullage calculation? You find the ullage and check in your sounding table. Suppose, let's say suppose in your sounding table you don't have ullage calculation, then you can easily find out the sounding also. Okay, you have to do the mathematics and find out the sounding level. So this is how you will have to take for heavy oil tanks. And more important is when you're doing bunkering. Now when you're taking bunkering, you have to stick with ullage. Okay, and you have to reduce the number of soundings which you're taking. Now that being said, that doesn't mean you have to reduce, take very few soundings. What I'm trying to say is, many times when you're taking bunker, now it's an empty tank, and you are trying to predict how much oil is coming, at what rate it is coming. Now you put the tape, okay, and you remove the tape, nothing has touched the tape, and you will do it again, you will remove it, nothing has touched. So sometimes you will get frustrated and you will think of taking a sounding, and you will lower the tape completely. And what will happen is, when you do that, the entire tape is coated with oil. When you're winding it up, you are bringing the tape up, yes, but whatever oil is stuck to the tape, when you're bringing it up, you're applying the oil to the entire pipe. Now what is the damage with that? When you will be taking the final sounding, it will be very difficult for you to know the actual sounding. So to avoid that, make sure you take ullage and have patience. Let the oil come. You will be having at start, when the bunkering started, obviously you can take sounding that at that point of time. So you know how much oil is rising. Within 15 to half an hour, you will have an idea at what rate you are getting supplied. So according to that rate, you can always calculate and lower the tape accordingly, so that you don't take sounding but you just take ullage. And when you take ullage, what happens is only the 10 centimeter on the bob will be filled with oil. Okay, max to max. If you are very good in your whatever speed at which you are supplying, and if your calculation is proper, then only that bob will be filled with oil, or the bob will be touched with oil. So that will not create much damage. Another thing which you can do is, when you're taking the final sounding, okay, you can have 1 liter of bottle of diesel oil, just pour it inside the sounding pipe. So that should clean somewhat of the oil which is stuck to the pipeline. And then you can take this ullage. So that will give you an accurate sounding. Also at this point, since we have discussed, since I've told you something about bunkering, always make sure that you take sounding before the air blow is done. Because after the air blow, the sounding will always show you a higher value, which is not the actual value. Okay. So next bunkering tank is your diesel oil tank. Now diesel oil tank, what you can do is you take the sounding. Now many a times it becomes difficult to even see diesel oil on the teeth. So you can use something called as gasoline finding paste, or if you just move the tape, you just move it in this way, slightly you hold the tape and just try to shake it a little bit. So when it will shine, you will come to know the level. And again, to cross check whether it is the correct level, you can just turn it behind, and when you see the level both sides matching, that means you are sure that that is the actual level. So this is how you will take sounding for diesel oil tank. For diesel oil tank, you can take sounding. You don't need to take ullage. Okay, diesel oil tank, you have to take sounding. Now one more tank, that is your scavenge drain tank. Here you have to be very, very careful, especially when the main engine is running. When the main engine is running, make sure you close the drain valve, the scavenge drain valve which is coming from the main engine. If you don't close it, and if you open the scavenge sounding pipe, this oil, hot oil will splash on you, will cause burns. If you missed, still it will dirty the area. Always keep this in your mind, make it a practice. Irrespective of the main engine is running or not, always close the valve. Close the valve before taking sounding and open the valve after taking sounding. This you should take care. Now when we are talking about sounding, another very caution I will say, always take sounding of all the tanks. If you are a junior engineer, or if you are the person who is supposed to be taking sounding, make sure you take sounding of all the tanks every day. Don't miss out any tank, whether it might be a Cofferdam or whether the tank level is never rising, maybe it has not risen in a decade, doesn't matter. Okay, you have to take a sounding every day, because the day you will not take, and if that day something goes wrong, and if you have done it for a long time, your entire ship will be in trouble, all people will be in trouble, and even your life will be in trouble. So make sure you take care of that and always take sounding. Okay, now let's discuss about the red flags. What do I mean by red flags is when you have to report, when you have to tell your second engineer, when you have to tell your chief engineer that something is wrong. When, let's say the first one is when your scavenge drain tank is not rising. Now you'll be wondering like, okay, scavenge drain tank is not rising, it's a good thing, there is no sludge getting generated. No. If there is no scavenge drain tank rising, that means your scavenge drain lines are choked and there is sludge which is getting accumulated in your scavenge manifold and under piston area, and what that can result in? Scavenge fires. So make sure if your scavenge tank is not rising, you do report your seniors on that very day, so that obviously if you are in port and the scavenge drain tank is not rising, then that is not an issue, because the main engine is not generating any sludge. Okay, and also if the scavenge drain tank starts rising too much, then also is a query, so you will have to report that time also. Now same goes for your stuffing box tank. We know stuffing box tank oil comes from your stuffing box, so make sure you report about that also if the tank level is not rising. Then another tank is waste oil tank. If that level is not dropping, that means something is wrong, that means your evaporation is not taking place. Now it could be there is too much sludge in the tank, okay, and that sludge has covered the coils. So that also could be the reason why the level is not dropping, because the temperature, whatever heating is happening, is not able to heat the water is not able to evaporate. So because of that, it could be that your tank level is not dropping. Also, another thing could be that your temperature is not coming up. You can notice from there also. So you have to be very observant on such things, so that proper evaporation takes place, continuous burning is done, regular burning, I will not say continuous, regular burning is done, and your sludge is maintained. Okay, it is not allowed to rise to a very high level. Now another issue is if your sludge holding tank or BSOT tank is rising very high or very fast, that is also an issue. Suppose it is rising very fast, it could be one of your purifiers is leaking, it from somewhere, some oil or something is coming to your sludge holding tank. Also, when you are running OWS, you have to be careful, you have to take sounding of the sludge holding tank, because what can happen is if your solenoid valve, which is operated pneumatically, gets stuck, and if it gets stuck, what can happen is whatever bilge water you're trying to pump out might start going through this valve and will reach to your sludge holding tank and will start filling the sludge holding tank. So you have to be very careful when you're doing the oily water separator operation. Make sure you take sounding of this tank continuously, so that if by mistake anything gets stuck, you can rectify it and avoid the sludge tank getting filled with water. Also, another thing which you have to notice is, suppose your sludge tank, your sludge holding tank level is not rising after even transfer. So that means you have to understand that the pipeline is choked, and because of that the level is not rising. So you will have to report so that the pipeline is cleared and the actual value which is there. Otherwise, what will happen is suddenly if the tank rises, you will not come to know. Okay. Another tank which you have to take care is Cofferdam. Cofferdam is such a tank which might not rise, for every day. And if you avoid that tank, if you're not paying attention, then if something goes wrong, you will not able to know. And in that tank, suppose something starts rising, it doesn't matter how much quantity has risen, you have to report. Another thing is, if the bob is broken, then also you will have to report and try to remove the bob, maybe if you can, or accordingly when you're taking sounding, accordingly calculations have to be done. Now another issue which people have is during rough weather. During rough weather, especially if you're taking sounding of bunker tanks, is very difficult. I would say you should avoid it, but suppose you have to take because rough weather is every day, then I would say you will have to take at least 3-4 readings and try to take an average. And whenever try to time it with the rolling of your ship if you can. I'm not saying it is possible, but if it is possible, you can always try to do that and accordingly take the sounding. If you find 2 to 3 different readings when you're taking the sounding, try to average it out. That will not give you the accurate value, but it will at least tell you how much oil is there inside the tank. Okay. Hope you guys have understood the video. If I have missed out anything, please do write down. If I have not mentioned anything, or if you like the video, please do comment, give a thumbs up, tell me what you feel, and if you had any problems about sounding when you do sounding, or if you had any issues or you had similar problems and you never knew, you can still write down your story. I would like to know about it. And till my next video, best of luck, be safe and take care.